Have you ever wondered what we ate every day with Jesus? It wasn't a feast, it wasn't luxury, it was simple, but somehow sacred. Most people picture the Last Supper as the only memorable meal, but what about the others? The mornings in Capernaum? The days by the Sea of Galilee? The cold nights on the mountain? Today I want to take you to that table. Not just to see what we ate, but to understand how he used simple food to nourish our souls. Even after all these years, I still remember the mornings by the Sea of Galilee. The earthy scent of barley bread, baking over slow-burning firewood. The quiet holiness of simple routines. Bread wasn't just food, it was a ritual of faith, shaped by rough hands and shared without haste. Made from barley flour and water, this humble bread sustained us. It was often paired with olive oil, dried fruits, or lentil stew. But what truly filled us wasn't the food itself, it was the presence of Jesus. When he broke bread, he also broke silence, revealing the hunger of the soul. In his hands, bread became more than sustenance. It became a sermon. Alongside bread, we shared steaming bowls of lentil or chickpea stew cooked slowly with wild herbs and love. Meals with Jesus weren't rushed or careless. They were sacred pauses in the rhythm of our lives. We ate slowly, listening as he spoke softly between bites. Even with simple clay bowls and no luxury, the table felt richer than any Roman feast. Our days followed a natural rhythm, a morning and evening meal without excess, always with gratitude. Jesus treated every meal like an act of worship, blessing and breaking bread with a reverence that turned even the most ordinary food into a divine moment. Our meals with Jesus weren't formal or structured. We ate on mats, on rocks, even on the ground. There were no individual plates or cups, no utensils. We shared everything, reminding us of the kingdom Jesus preached, simple, communal, and full of grace. Sharing food was more than hospitality. It was a spiritual act. And perhaps that's why Jesus chose bread to represent his body. It was humble, nourishing, and meant to be shared. In breaking bread together, we shared not only a meal but also a piece of him. Though our diet seemed simple, it was rich with meaning. Fruits like figs, dates, and grapes weren't just sweet. They were sacred reminders of God's goodness, sustenance during long journeys, and symbols of joy. Wine, diluted and shared daily, became a sign of communion. And Jesus, knowing their deeper significance, used them to teach eternal truths, like the vine and the branches in John 15. Through common food, he revealed spiritual lessons, using nature itself as a parable. Olive oil was perhaps the most sacred of all, pressed with care and used for everything from healing to worship. Herbs like mint and cumin added flavor to our humble dishes, and even they held spiritual weight in his teachings. Jesus taught that the small things mattered, but the heart behind them mattered more. Around our shared meals, where each ingredient had a story, we didn't just eat. We learned, healed, and remembered who we were and who he was. We didn't live in scarcity, but in a simple, God-dependent abundance. Our food came fresh from the earth, not stored in shelves or freezers. Each day brought its own provision, teaching us to trust in God's timing, just as the Israelites did in the desert. Jesus reinforced this with his prayer, "Give us this day our daily bread." It wasn't about having plenty in storage, it was about learning to depend on God for today and trusting him for tomorrow. Modern archaeology has backed this up, uncovering seeds, dried fruit fibers, and storage vessels for oil and wine in Jerusalem and Capernaum, evidence of a diet rooted in natural plant-based nutrition. What scientists now call the biblical Mediterranean diet was our way of life, simple, wholesome, and balanced. But more than nutrients, our meals carried faith, the kind of faith that no recipe can replicate. Every meal was both nourishment and spiritual practice, but the centerpiece of our daily table wasn't just bread, it was fish. Most of us were fishermen before we became disciples, and fish was not only our food, it was our identity. We grilled it, dried it, salted it, and ate it with bread and lentils. It was the food that connected us to our childhood, our labor, and our Lord. Jesus watched us cast our nets. He stood beside us on the shore, and he used fish to perform miracles, multiplying it to feed thousands, using it to show he understood our daily needs. After the crucifixion, when grief left us empty, we returned to fishing, to something familiar. But our nets caught nothing until he appeared again on the shore, already grilling fish for us. It was a deeply human moment, the risen Christ preparing a meal. He knew the power of that gesture. He met us in the ordinary, through the food we understood, and reminded us that he was still with us. Fishing itself became a metaphor for the kingdom. In Luke 5, when Jesus asked us to cast our nets again after a fruitless night, he wasn't testing us. He was teaching us trust, timing, and obedience. And when he called us fishers of men, he gave new meaning to our work. Fish became a symbol of transformation, a sign that we were called to rescue, not just eat, and this symbol endured. In the centuries that followed, persecuted Christians drew the fish symbol, the ichthys, to identify each other. It was a sign of Jesus born out of something we ate every day. Even today, archaeological finds near Lake Gennesaret confirm our fish-based diet. It was healthy, nourishing, and deeply spiritual. But even fish, as essential as it was, gave way on special days to something more sacred, meat. And when lamb appeared at our table, it didn't just mean food. It meant sacrifice, memory, and redemption. To understand the meaning of meat in our meals with Jesus, you have to let go of the idea of meat as something ordinary. In our time, it was rare, expensive, and sacred, reserved for special moments, like religious feasts or sacrifices. When meat appeared, it wasn't just food. It was a sign of God's provision and a reminder of his covenant. The Passover lamb especially reminded us of our deliverance from Egypt, but with Jesus that symbol took on new depth. He didn't just eat the lamb, he became the lamb, the ultimate sacrifice. The Passover had clear instructions in Exodus: a perfect lamb, roasted whole, eaten with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. It was a meal of remembrance, a sacred ritual retelling our rescue. But that night with Jesus, when he broke the bread and said, "This is my body," we knew something was different. He shifted the focus, not from Egypt to himself, and in doing so revealed a new covenant. That lamb on the table wasn't just history, it was prophecy. He was the fulfillment. Meat at those feasts, lamb, goat, or beef, was treated with deep reverence. It wasn't just about cooking, it was about waiting, preparing, praying. That's why meat only showed up at certain times with Jesus. Our everyday food was simple: grains, legumes, fruit, fish. But when God wanted to say something profound, he chose meat. And on that final night, when he lifted the cup and said, "This is my blood poured out for you," he wasn't just giving us a symbol, he was giving us himself. That night is still vivid in my memory. The weight in the air, the silence around the table, the sense that something holy was happening. We didn't know yet what was coming, but we felt it. The lamb we ate became a living metaphor of the sacrifice Jesus was about to make. It wasn't just a meal. It was a turning point, and even after the resurrection, he kept using meals to reveal himself. In Emmaus, it was the breaking of bread, not a sermon, that opened our eyes. Today, most people eat on the go, distracted, disconnected. But meals with Jesus were different. They were slow, intentional, sacred. He used food not only to nourish, but to teach and reveal. That's why the table wasn't just a place to eat. It was a place of transformation. Bread, wine, and fish weren't just menu items. They were holy symbols of communion, grace, and presence. And in a world that's lost that rhythm, maybe it's time we return to that table. Modern science now praises the diet we once lived by: whole grains, fruits, olive oil, fish, simple, real, nourishing. But more than what we ate, it was how we ate that mattered. With trust, with gratitude, with presence. We didn't store up. We trusted daily. And in that trust, we found peace. When Jesus said, "Give us this day our daily bread," he was reminding us that food was never just for the body, it was for the soul. And maybe that's the hunger we've forgotten how to feed. Many Christians today have full plates but empty souls. They have access to the best food, but they are spiritually starving, not because of what they eat, but how and with whom they eat. Jesus knew the table was a place of healing, discipleship, and revelation. He sat with sinners, the rejected and the broken, turning meals into holy encounters. And that table is still open, still waiting. But in today's noise and rush, do we still know how to sit? Maybe it's time to rediscover the simplicity and the sacredness of presence at the table. With Jesus, meals became divine moments. He didn't need a pulpit to teach. He used bread to open hearts, a shared meal to restore dignity. Whether in a sinner's home or by the sea, every table became a bridge between heaven and earth. He could transform an ordinary dinner into a sacred turning point. One look, one gesture, one broken loaf, and lives were never the same. Sharing bread with him fed more than the body. It revealed the Father's heart. I remember those moments like they just happened. A woman washing his feet with tears, Zacchaeus hearing his name and finding grace, two disciples recognizing him only when he broke bread. It wasn't the food, it was what happened while we ate. That's how he still comes to us. In the quiet, in the shared meal, in the breaking of bread. It's no wonder Revelation ends with a banquet. From Genesis to the final chapter, God invites us to his table. Even after his resurrection, Jesus used meals to reveal himself, a fish breakfast by the sea, bread in Emmaus. He didn't just speak truth, he lived it through every bite, every pause, every moment of togetherness. The table wasn't just for eating, it was for transformation. That's why even now he stands at the door and knocks, not just to visit, but to dine, to sit, to be. And yet, I'll never forget the first meal without him. The silence, the weight of absence, the bread untouched, the wine untouched. It wasn't just hunger we felt, it was loss. We missed his voice, his hands breaking the bread, his glance that made everything feel right. That longing has never fully left. Even knowing he lives, I still crave his presence at the table. Because once you've eaten with God, everything else feels like a shadow. That's why I pray before every meal, not out of habit, but because every plate reminds me of him, every piece of bread, a whisper of his body, every sip of wine, a memory of his sacrifice. That memory became a sacred hunger. And the truth is, nothing satisfies like eating with Jesus. Nothing fills the soul like his presence. And every meal now is just a rehearsal for the feast that is still to come. But there is also hope in that longing, a whisper of certainty hidden between salt and oil, because he promised he would return. And he said that on that day he would drink again from the fruit of the vine with us in his kingdom, as it is written in Matthew chapter 26, verse 29. I tell you, I will not drink again from this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. That promise keeps our table set. It makes me continue to break bread, even when he isn't visible, because I know the invisible is still present. Every time we gather in his name, he is there. Every meal becomes a rehearsal for the eternal supper. So, if you feel that same emptiness, if you look at your plate and sense that something is missing, maybe it's him. Maybe it's time to return to eating with Jesus. It doesn't matter what's on your plate. What matters is who is with you at the table. And he still knocks at the door. He still waits. He still invites. And if you open, he comes in, he dines, he remains. And that's why I want to extend a very simple yet deeply meaningful invitation. Because if that flavor is missing for you, if that presence eludes you, there is a way back. And in the final next chapter, I'll show you how to find that table again. Because it is still set, and he is still waiting for you. Now that you have walked this story with me, maybe you understand why no ordinary food satisfies me completely anymore. It's because once you eat with Jesus, your taste changes. Your body may still crave worldly flavors, but your soul longs for more. This isn't nostalgia. It's the quiet recognition that we were made for his table. And since Eden, God has called us to this place of communion, intimacy, restoration, and even after everything, after the cross, resurrection, ascension, he continues to invite us. Come, sit, dine with me. Maybe you're listening to all of this and feel that this table is too far away. Maybe the weight of routine, wounds, wrong choices has pulled you away from the place where it all begins, the breaking of bread with Jesus. But let me tell you, he never closed the door. He never dismantled the table. It is still set. There's still a reserved seat for you. There's still warm bread, pure wine, and healing in his gaze that no words can convey. That emptiness you feel inside, that hunger no success, pleasure, or food can fill, is the hunger for him. And he is the only one who can satisfy it. And if you've come this far, it's because something in you recognizes that call. So I want to invite you, very simply but with profound sincerity, to return to the table, return to presence, return to the bread of life. Begin with one gesture, a prayer, a decision, and if you don't know where to start, I've prepared a path to help. The devotional Your 30 Steps from God is more than a book. It's a 30-day journey back to God's heart. And I invite you to take that first step today. In it, you'll find stories like the one we've just shared, told by people who failed, who felt longing, who almost gave up, but were reached by grace. There's a chapter told by me, I am John, I stayed until the end. And in it you'll discover what made me remain, even when everyone else walked away, link in first comment. But if today, beyond the hunger, what hurts is silence. If you've looked at the sky and asked where God was when everything fell apart, then you need to hear what Job heard when he dared to ask, who is this God who allows so much suffering? Watch now. I am Job. And this is what God said when I questioned his origin.